team to present the text. Thank you.
Okay, so we also want to acknowledge people online before we hand over for the press statement itself. And online, we have Andrew Mamedu. He has been recognized by Nkechi Ilochikane. So Andrew is online. Okay, Andrew, please unmute yourself and please speak to us.
Good morning, comrades. Andrew here. Thank you very much. This meeting is timely, as Nkechi has said, and I welcome you all again. Thank you so much. I'm here fully with you.
Thank you very much, sir. That being said, we're going to hand over to the press. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the media, and let me say welcome. We are here to discuss what we consider critical issues in Nigeria's public finance management. And these issues are not just about processes alone. They are not just technical issues. They are also about outcomes and how the fiscal and governance process impacts on the people of Nigeria, our security and welfare. So we are looking at public finance from the prisons of transparency and accountability. We are looking at issues around constitutional and statutory provisions in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, Public Procurement Act, the laws governing debt management, etc. So the first issue we are raising is about budgeting. Of course, we know that the budget was presented late, December 19th, 2019, because normally the National Assembly should have gone on their vacation. And the medium-term expenditure framework, which is supposed to be the background document and whose approval will give us the key underlying assumptions, was also presented to the National Assembly on December 10th. So as at the time the budget was presented, there was no approved medium-term expenditure framework, contrary to the provisions of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Even as we speak today, we have been told that the National Assembly have approved that MTEF. But if you go to the website of the Budget Office of the Federation or that of the National Assembly, there is no approved MTEF on their websites. What you still see is that draft, which was considered by the National Assembly before they approved that. And this is fundamentally flawed because the Fiscal Responsibility Act is clear that the budget ought to be and should be derived from those critical indicators in the MTEF. Then we are looking at the issue also of the passage of the 2026 federal budget. As we still speak today, even though the media reports that the National Assembly has approved the budget, of course, it cannot become law until the president assented to it. And what we have today is that there's been an increase by about 9 trillion, okay? In between when it was presented, it was about 58 trillion, right? Today we are discussing about 68 point something trillion. But unfortunately, the 58 trillion had an inbuilt deficit of 25 point something trillion, which was about 43 or thereabout percent of the total expected revenue. Now we have increased it to 68 trillion. We are going to be discussing a deficit that is more or less chasing about 6% of the GDP, which is beyond the statutory provision in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which capped it at 3%. Unless the country is in a state of emergency or engaged in war or a very serious situation, that is when the Fiscal Responsibility Act allows us to exceed that 3% maximum ceiling. And today we have a situation where we have more than exceeded that ceiling. So where is the money going to come from? Likely we are going to borrow, but we already overborrowed. Or likely they're anticipating that money will come from the new money that will come from the high oil prices, because as of today, Bonnet Light, which is Nigeria's spec, is selling above $110 per barrel. And the budget, it was provided for about $64.8 or thereabout. So you are discussing a balance of about $50 per barrel. But that's not the way to do budgeting. You don't do budgeting on an expectation or expectancy you are not sure will materialize, because this war started suddenly. It could also end suddenly if Donald Trump or the president of Israel decides to end it today. So that money, assuming it materializes, should have been put into the excess crude account. And by the time you review the budget implementation later in the year, you can now decide to appropriate it. And of course, share it between the three tiers of the government, federal government, state government, and the local governments. And then we have a critical challenge also, that the capital budget has not been implemented. And as a result of that, we always have this rollover of budgets. Okay, saying 2025 budget, we roll it over to March. The president promised in his budget speech that everything will end in March. Now we're in March. The National Assembly has said, move it to June. And so they are violating the Financial Year Act and the Section 318 of the Constitution. These define the financial year as the period between January 1 and the 31st of January, December in each year. And if you look at appropriation acts, they clearly state that everything in the budget should be implemented in that fiscal year ending in 31st of December, so that after 31st of December, it should lapse. But what happens is that the National Assembly says we have extended the budget year because of that constitutional provision which says they are to define. Okay? But if you look at the law properly, that Section 318 that says they should define is an extension of Section 4 of the Constitution, which is the powers of the legislature to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of the Federation. So if it is already defined in law, for you to do anything contrary to that law, you must amend that law. And amending a law comes by way of an amendment bill, which passes through all the processes and crucibles in the parliament. And after that, goes to the president for assent. So you cannot just amend the law by saying those in favor say aye, those against say nay. That's not the way. That's a motion. You cannot use a motion to amend a substantive law, because what they do is illegal, it's unconstitutional, it's ultra-vires the powers of the National Assembly as well as the powers of the president. So if you need to amend the Appropriation Act, you come by way of amendment bill. If you need to amend the financial year bill, you come by way of amendment bill. If you want to amend the Constitution, that's even a more difficult one, because what you need to do is that you have to, after National Assembly, go around all the states. So we are calling them out on that. And then the other issue is the refusal to report on budget implementation. You cannot simply say for the whole of 2025, all you have is first quarter and second quarter. Even if nothing was done, the law says report. Just report to us that you've done nothing. That's what you should do, so that we Nigerians will know that you've done nothing. The law did not say don't report if you did nothing. Tell us you've done nothing. Then there's weak citizen participation and budget transparency, because most of the times everything about the budget process, the door is closed. Citizens are not even given an opportunity. And then there is that weak link between the assumptions in the MTF and fiscal policies and what you have in the budget, because there's what we call the law policy budget continuum. What you should have in the budget is a reflection of the implementation of your laws and policies and what you have in the MTF, but that is not being done. For debt management, you can see that a loan request was brought, and you in the media told us that under 3 or 4 hours, the eyes had it. Okay? There was no reference to any committee. There was no opportunity for public hearing. And it was just like they were standing on his mandate. We can't continue running a country that way. Look at even the scenario. Most of the people in the Senate are former governors who have served 2 terms. Fairly old men in their 60s and 70s. The average age of people in the House of Reps is also about that 50, 60. And they are taking decisions to borrow money with a long period of amortization that the payment will start being due 30, 35 years. So in 30, 35 years, and the number of women in that National Assembly is about 4 point something percent, not up to 5%. So women are excluded in making the decision. The people who will pay that money are the young boys and girls who are just finishing school, about to enter school. Those are the people who will pay this money in 30, 35 years. Most of the national people in National Assembly will have either gone to heaven or hell, wherever they merit to be. I'm being honest with you. I may not even be here in 30, 35 years. If I add 30 to my age, I know how old I will be. And some of you may not even be here. So why don't we invite those who will pay the money in the decision-making process at the end of the day? What they're doing is wrong. Of course, debt transparency, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, Section 44(5) says the DMO should maintain a comprehensive portal accessible to the public at all times, showing us how much we are owing, how it was accrued. As of today, if you go to their portal, it's only September 2025. Okay, that's where you have the last one. There's none for December. Tinubu started with about 87 trillion. The last report said it's about 153 trillion we are owing. And the letter he wrote to the National Assembly indicated it has moved to about 159 trillion. So before he leaves, we could end up with about 400 trillion. So these are clear challenges. Then other issues, high fuel costs. I think we are paying about 1,003 or 1,004 today, and nothing is being done to ameliorate it. Already the situation was not what it should be. Monumental waste in public refineries. We have refineries. People took money at different times for Warri and Port Harcourt, $2.9 billion. Okay, they took the money, promised us they will rehabilitate it, either wasted the money or pocketed it. Those refineries are not working. If it is in law, there's what they call res ipsa loquitur. The thing speaks for itself. You said, give us money and we rehabilitate the refineries. We gave you the money and the refineries are not rehabilitated. What should we do to them? It is up to Nigerians for us to decide. And then, electricity palaver. You can see what is wrong with the electricity system. We hardly have electricity up to 4 or 5 hours. So-called experts will tell you is that we are paying non-reflective tariff. But those on band A know that they are paying beyond the reflective tariff, cost reflective tariff. Today, the president has approved 3.3 trillion, and the money was going to be borrowed to pour into that hole. But we're also told by another set of experts that we are losing about 40% of all electricity generated in what is called aggregate technical, commercial, and collection losses. By the time you put electricity in the grid, going from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri, you lose a certain part of it. Who pays? Still the same customers who they say are not paying a cost-reflective tariff. So all these things have combined to make Nigeria in a very precarious economic state. And the earlier things are done, like you will see in our recommendations, the better for Nigeria and the citizens. So I will hand over to my colleague to read the recommendations thereafter. Everybody on the table here will still make some inputs.
Yeah, sure. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the issues are quite monumental, the whole lot of them. So, but we have recommendations addressing each of the issues raised here. So we'll look at institutional reforms. So we need to strengthen the independence and enforcement powers of the Fiscal Commission to ensure compliance with fiscal laws. So we see our Fiscal Commission is a body that is supposed to, check the physical behavior of MDAs, but unfortunately it has no power of sanction. It cannot sanction. So it's existing but has no power. Okay, introduce mandatory sanctions for breaches of the Fiscal Responsibility Act and other public finance regulations. Establish a public finance compliance scorecard for ministers, for the MDAs, to be published annually. We had this in the past, but it's no longer a practice. It's something that we need to bring back on board. Conduct an annual independent public finance compliance audit and publish findings for public scrutiny. Okay, on the budgeting, a whole lot were mentioned about the budgeting from the transparency, accountability, and also participation aspect of it. But the key thing from what was raised is that fundamentally the budget, our budget process is not participatory, is not people-centered. And for that, the challenge continued to be there. So these are some of the recommendations. The executive and the NAS should collaborate to rejig the 2026 federal budget to ensure that the deficit does not exceed the good practice of 3% of the GDP as provided for in the FRA. Urgent steps should be taken by NAS and the president to ensure that the federal budget is approved and gets assent within the next 10 days. Okay, the underlying assumptions of the 2026 federal budget should be in tandem with the fiscal framework and approvals in the MTEF 2026 to 2028. So a whole lot was mentioned under this. To kickstart the early preparation of the 2027 federal budget, the Budget Office of the Federation, Ministries of Finance, Budget and Economic Planning should start the process of preparing the MTEF 2027 to 2029 immediately to ensure that it is ready for the approval of the Executive Council of the Federation before the end of June, submitted to NAS early July 2026. The revenue profile of the 2026 federal budget should not include expected windfalls from crude oil. Any windfall should be saved in excess of crude oil accounts, as has been the practice. It may be appropriated later in the year upon the review of the budget performance 2026. The executive should ensure that the 2025 capital budget is closed by June and focus on the implementation of the 2026 budget. They told us this is moved to June, so let's hope that it will end in June. The president should ensure the full release of accrued revenue for the full implementation of the capital budget, avoiding carryovers to the next year. Any unimplemented 2026 capital budget should be included in the 2027 capital budget. There should be no need to seek to extend the financial year. If it must be done, it should be done with the amendment of the timing clauses of the Appropriation Act. Amend the Fiscal Responsibility Act to introduce enforceable sanctions for non-compliance by the public officials and the institutions. Develop and maintain real-time public finance transparency portal, integrating budget, debt, expenditure data, making them accessible to the citizens. On the debt management, a whole lot was said. So there are a whole lot of recommendations here. This is a major area of concern being raised. The debt management office should start the publication of debt updates every quarter, not later than 30 days after every quarter, in line with the fit and good practices. So if you go to DMO website, the depth there is as at September 2025. Not up to date, but this needs to be updated. NAS should revert to due process in the approval of loans. Loans in other places in democracy is a legislative process. Is a legislative process. Loans should be introduced. In some cases, it's thrown open for public discourse. Public discourse means that citizens have a say because they are part of those that are paying it. So what it means is that you throw this out and citizens debate, on why such loans should be taken or not, and looking at also the social cost, because there's no loan without cost. Okay, so this includes the publication of the letter and accompanying schedule from the president on their website and the DMO publishing same on the website. This will include the type and location of projects, the terms and tenure of the loan. Projects, requests for loan should be accompanied with detailed projects of what the loan is intended for. National Assembly should provide opportunity for citizen participation in the loan approval process. Introduce a statutory requirement for cost-benefit analysis, public disclosure, and stakeholder consultation prior to the approval of the loan. So this is the process, how it should be. Okay. High fuel cost. Considering the high cost of living, the 2026 federal budget should contain specific and targeted policies for the poorest of the poor in transport, food, energy. It is not about the distribution of cash alone, but there should be infrastructure on the ground. There should be facilities that will help the people. Develop targeted data-driven social protection framework linked to savings from subsidy removal. A whole lot has been saved from the subsidy. I recall we are told about $2 billion on monthly basis. So till then, from then till now, if we calculate it, how much is it? So where is that money going? You know, the idea of removing fuel subsidy, we expected there should be a framework in place that shows where this money is going. Is it to education sector, health, agriculture, transportation, infrastructure? So the media, you should also help us ask this question. We need a framework out there, you know, telling us where this subsidy is going into. Okay, develop a targeted data-driven social protection framework linked to savings from subsidy removal, focusing on transport, food security, energy access for vulnerable populations. Okay, on the refineries, we need to investigate, prosecute, and punish all persons who participated in the mismanagement of the refineries, starting from those in charge of wasting $2.9 billion without result in the last 4 years. Anybody above 20 years must have had a whole lot. Technical turnaround, refurbishing, rejuvenation, and all manners of name, with billions of dollars accompanying them. But we are still where we are. Okay? We need to consider selling or to concession the refinery so that Nigerians can drive some values from them. Leaving them idle will only condemn them to a scrap value wherever a decision will be made in future in consideration that these are old refineries which will be complete. So this equally subject to debate. Is selling them a solution? He's selling them a solution. So if an individual can run a refinery, build a refinery of 20 point something billion dollars, an individual. So a country that has been exporting oil since the 60s has not been able to run refinery that other countries are running effectively. So is it deliberate or is it lacking capacity of the state? We will all talk to this. Okay, electricity industry. Hold the distribution companies accountable to their obligations to invest, manage, and improve the distribution end of electricity. This should be made. This should include investments in meters and transformers. The Federal Electricity Regulator should hold the transmission subsector accountable for the reduction of transmission losses. The transmission grid should be removed from new investments or improved. There should be a public account and value for money audit of the expenditure of billions of dollars in loans incurred over the years by Nigeria for the improvement of the electricity industry. So this is our recommendations. So my colleagues will all take time to speak to this issue. Then we'll open up the space for chat. We have enough time to chat. Okay? So Rafsanjani.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, Nigerians have been asking questions about the various loans taken in the last 3 years under this administration. We have taken loans that have no significant improvement of the socio-economic well-being of Nigerians. As a matter of fact, as the government is taking more loans, poverty is increasing in Nigeria. As the government is taking more loans, Nigerians are not able to afford housing. Nigerians are not able to even pay transportation. Not to talk about medical bill. Not to talk about quality education, improving quality education. And even the infrastructure that is supposed to be, addressed to enable rural farmers bring out their products. Nigerians are not seeing those things. So why are we taking this huge amount of loans? We have taken over 60 trillion under the current administration on loans. And there's no any data showing that despite the saving we have made from the subsidy removal, anything close to health sector improvement, educational sector improvement, electricity, even the roads, there's no any verifiable physical tangible data to show Nigerians' lives have been improved, despite the huge saving from the subsidy. So we are asking, you are not doing subsidy, you virtually withdraw subsidy in everything, in subsidy in healthcare, subsidy in education, subsidy in agriculture, subsidy in transport facilities, subsidy in virtually everything have been withdrawn in Nigeria. Yet you keep on borrowing, and these borrowings have not reflected improvement on the socio-economic well-being of Nigerians. Therefore, our representative in the National Assembly, who are quick to approve requests from Mr. President. In fact, we have never had in legislature that within short period of time continuously continue to approve loan without even asking for the detail or what has happened with the previous ones. This is a self-indictment by our National Assembly. Your loyalty is to the Nigerian Constitution, is to the Nigerian people. And if because of the desperation to get second term approval by Mr. President, you mortgage the mandate given to you by the people to be approving and making reckless borrowing and financial recklessness the order of the day, certainly you will have ended up betraying that mandate. So we in civil society, we did not say don't to borrow, because we have a law that clearly spells out how to borrow and how to pay back those loans. But sadly, government is not observing or respecting those laws. And the people who are making the law are not also asking for proper implementation of that law. That is where the indictment of our National Assembly members have come. Many of them, they have said it privately that they don't even get to know the details of the request, not to talk about the implementation of the loans collected. So if you have the people's mandate and you are supposed to be complying with the constitution and the law you have made on how loans should be taken and should be utilized, then you have failed woefully in your responsibility to ensure effective oversight on how those loans are. And that's, for me, is a betrayal to the Nigerian people, because within the last 3 years, the amount of loan taken under this administration is overwhelming. Put together since the return of democracy, we have never taken even half of that loan. This is something that we should be concerned, especially as the country is making more money. If you look at the declaration by the various revenue agencies in the country, they have actually made more revenues. They made more revenues, and yet these revenues are not reflecting in addressing hunger, poverty, lack of access to water, lack of access to basic needs, no dignity even in level in Nigeria. So we want to call on the National Assembly and Mr. President to say that your mandate is not to punish Nigerians, it's not to destroy the Nigerian economy, it's not to put us under perpetual poverty, instability, but you are to help to make sure that through your progressive policies and programs, uplift Nigeria and Nigerians from the shackle of poverty, underdevelopment, and collapse of infrastructure. But sadly, we have no any physical verifiable data to show that the government, all the money they have collected, all the money they have made, they have helped to address those problems. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are worried about the financial and economic recklessness in Nigeria. The amount of waste and duplication you see in Nigeria, we cannot sustain that spending. Therefore, government must deprioritize personal and wasteful projects to invest in a project that can help accelerate development, that will deal with the poverty that has been artificially created, because Nigerian poverty is artificial poverty. It is not a natural poverty, because God has given us all the necessary resources to handle those things. So I want to give it to my colleague to add his voice.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the press. What we have set out here is not merely critique. It is a call to restore fidelity to law, to process, and to public trust. A nation does not drift into dysfunction. It is led there by choices to ignore rules, to bend institutions, and to normalize opacity. We must now choose differently. This moment demands courage from those in authority, vigilance from citizens, and integrity from institutions. Public finance is not an abstract system. It is the moral ledger of governance. And where that ledger is distorted, justice itself is weakened. We stand, therefore, not in opposition, but in insistence that Nigeria can and must govern itself lawfully, transparently, and in the interest of the people. Right now, I don't think we are governing ourselves lawfully, transparently, and the interest of the people, and not of few privileged people. My colleagues have, we have also written about the excess crude resources that we are getting. I think it's time for government to think about how to ameliorate the cost of transport and living generally for ordinary Nigerians now. We have Dangote refinery. No matter whatever anybody thinks about that refinery, without it, things would have been worse than it is now. So can government also consider, and some people have also been talking about this, can we also consider a subsidy system with the refinery that they basically provide fuel at reduced cost to Nigerians, and government pays them directly and not through some opaque system that people would then abuse? It is possible. We always seem to be afraid of ensuring that we take reforms that impact some people because we think some people will abuse the reform. So if government is afraid of people abusing reform, then it means the government is not ready to govern. Government should be able to say, we need to do what is right, and then punish those who are destroying whatever it is that we are doing, rather than always preempting that people will abuse it. So I think we need to go back to specific kind of subsidy that ensures that citizens are able to move more freely and enjoy some relief from all of this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And I think after everything that has been said, of course, it's important to acknowledge the fact that the multiple budgets being currently in operation, the heightening of additional funds being injected into the system, and of course, the increasing public debt. Key among these that we would like to highlight is the lack of participation by key marginalized groups like women and children in Nigeria. And this is affecting our lives, obviously, in the way we are currently being and living our lives in Nigeria. Despite an increase in budgetary allocation over the years from about 6 trillion naira in 2016 to the 56 trillion of what it is today, we still have very low funds being allocated to issues around gender, inclusion, and equality. This is affecting girls' education. This is affecting health. This is also affecting our response to gender-based violence in our nation, as 3 out of 5 Nigerian women still suffer from physical or sexual abuse. Yet, the budget we see today does not address gender-based protection, does not have any provision for gender protection services that are critical for how we need to address these issues. We need to see a budget that expands GBV protection funding, providing shelter. Obviously, people are being displaced. People are being killed. We see it happening all over this country. We will need to see legal support being funded. We will need to see psychosocial support being provided. We will need to see an enforcement of the VAP Act in our country. Also, we will need to see a significant increase of funding to key critical areas like the Ministry of Women Affairs, and get them strengthened to be able to provide this kind of responses to our teeming women and children across our country. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue this discussion.
So we hear briefly from the Nigerian Labour Congress, then our country director, Andrew Mamedu, will speak, then we'll open up the floor.
Thank you very much. Warm greetings from the Nigeria Labour Congress and the gentlemen of the press. For us in the NSC, we are quite elated to be part of this press conference. For us, this is a renewed call for resurgence, for struggle and campaign against kleptocracy, because it is very obvious that kleptocrats have taken over the leadership of Nigeria government and the people and be slaves. For us, it is becoming very clear that all the government policies alleged to be for the development of the country are enslaving Nigeria. They are impoverishing Nigeria. And the alleged savings or gains from these policies are being stolen by a few, and Nigerians are suffering for it. For instance, the subsidy withdrawal, one would have expected that with the withdrawal of the subsidy, the resources saved would have been invested in public and social services where Nigeria should benefit. But Nigerians are becoming worse for it. If you travel on our roads today, you will see that Nigeria is almost, the roads are almost collapsing. Nigeria is almost a country without roads. And when you talk about investment in the refineries, billions of dollars have been alleged to be invested in the refinery, and to date, there is no result and there is no accountability. Rather, Nigeria are purchasing fuel at a higher cost, and that is making many Nigerians go below the poverty line. And like the NLC has said not too long ago, that the electricity tariff is the new bandit in town. Nigerians are being enslaved. There is high extortion, and there is serious exploitation of Nigeria through electricity tariffs. Nigerians are paying for darkness. Nigerians are paying for no light. Therefore, the NLC completely identify with this call for a coalition to engage in the campaign against kleptocracy and ensure that Nigeria benefit from the common good of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Okay, so at this juncture, we'll call on the country director of ActionAid, Andrew Mamedu, to also speak to us.
Thank you very
Andrew?
much. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me clearly? Hello, Gochuku, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you very much. Comrades, thank you very much. Sometimes I wonder if the authorities are listening to what we are saying, because these are matters that have been on for years, and we have been saying these same things, and they keep going ahead with what they are doing, talking about borrowing, about the deficits in the budget utilization, and the level of opaqueness in our budget. Clearly, the flouting of the laws, all the laws that is and Rafsanjani talked about. One thing that comes to mind, one of the major factor why we always have a huge deficit, is the issue of constituency projects. That has not come up strongly. If you notice, every year in, year out, it's now become a tradition. If you doubt it, take note next year. Every budget that goes to the National Assembly ends up coming back inflated. Every budget that goes to the National Assembly, when I mean every budget, I mean the annual budgets. So when a budget goes in, the National Assembly then takes their time and include their own constituency projects. I will give you one simple example. Last year, a particular ministry, a big ministry, sent in their budget, and their capital project was only 240 billion naira. That was their capital project. When it was returned, that budget increased. Their capital project increased to 1 trillion. And the minister said he is not aware that those amounts that have been fixed in there is not for him. They were just simply constituency projects that were put in there. And who owns this constituency project? Constituency project, like the name implies, is supposed to be for constituents, for the constituents of the National Assembly members. However, the contracts behind the implementation, I think that's a conversation, a frank conversation we need to have in the country. Who awards, who gets the contract, who gets the kickback, and at the end of the day, how transparent is the resources used at the end of the day? Lots of leakages is go through this system, and we are the ones, the citizens, we are the ones that pay for it. How do we go about stopping it? How do we have this conversation? And it does not just stop there. Last year, the budget office, because we also speak to these people one-on-one, we have conversation, we have insiders there, and they said the budget office, they are struggling to cash back those amounts because they didn't plan for that. But the National Assembly is like a Russian roulette, where they will look at who will blink first. The National Assembly is insisting that their projects their constituency project be funded, and the budget office is saying that we do not have money to fund this project. Why would a president send in a budget and the budget is increased drastically by a particular amount and the president is forced to sign that amount? It's because they are trying to help each other. When the president brings loan, the National Assembly approves for you. So they will tell the president, now we have put our project in the budget. You have to sign our own project and cash back it. And I hear currently the National Assembly members are not happy because their project, majority of their projects have not been cash backed. And they are insisting that before they go ahead to do anything, that the president must cash back them. These are honest conversations that we need to bring in the open and force the executive and the legislators to have the conversation with the citizens of Nigeria, who they are supposed to be loyal to and not to their personal interests. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you to the lead speaker and to every other speaker that has spoken. Okay, so at this juncture, we are going to be taking questions from the media and comments, questions from, sorry? From the audience and from the media. So we're going to be taking questions. If I pass the mic to you, or if you indicate interest and I pass the mic to you, please state your name and your organization and ask your question, and answers will be provided. Okay, 1, 2. So we'll start from you, Matthew.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Abbey from Classic 94.3 FM Abuja. In all of these concerns raised, we talk about debt management, budgeting, high fuel cost, refinery, and so on. What is your major hit point, the major concern that this group, now you've mentioned all this today, which is going to be captured, yes? What is the major point, the main message for this press conference, Nigeria Economic and Fiscal Environment? What do you aim to achieve? Are you looking at the government? Sorry, please. Are you looking at the legal and governance framework? Is it what you want the government to pinpoint exactly today? You know, sometimes when you bring these items, so many like this, they'll just be looking, which one are we going to do now? We're all in Nigeria. So what is the hit point?
Okay, so do we take all the questions and come back to you? Okay. Please, if there's anyone online, please signify by raising up your hand. Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Zainab Uzoma from Hot FM. I would like to ask that with the civil societies, with the recommendations you have made as civil society, who do you think should be held responsible for the implementation of the recommendations? And do you think they are actually workable with regards to what is happening in Nigeria today? With all the complaints about the politicians, the House of Reps, Senate, and the President, who should we actually hold responsible for all this?
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Goodluck Emmanuel Adubazi from Standard Times Nigerian newspaper. My question to the CSOs is, are we aware that 3.3 trillion naira was approved May 17, 2024 to settle energy crisis? Same amount, April 5th, 2026 was approved. If we are aware, what do you do? Who do we hold accountable for all this? And if you're not aware, now that we're aware, what do we do? Thank you.
Greetings. My name is Sunday Ejike. I write from Nigerian Tribune. My question is, there's like the country director said, each year that a budget is passed, there's always one problem or the other. And then it now boils to what can the civil society do to ensure that this thing doesn't repeat itself every year? It should not end at just organizing press conference to address the issue. What proactive action can be taken by CSO to address the situation? And then secondly, you say a lot of money has gone into the over turnaround maintenance of refinery, whatever name they call it, yet it's yielding no result. Now, how can the civil society be involved now in compelling? Because I know one or two civil, like the setup, they have several cases against the federal government in various courts in the country, compelling the federal government to do the needful. Are other civil society group towing this line?
I think, okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Abigail from TVC News. So from your assessment of the issues on ground, I think that if we don't know the root causes or where to attack these problems from, we will just be going in circles. So with these primary issues that you've raised from your assessment, what do you think is the cause of all of this? Is it from weak institutions, political interference, or deliberate circumvention of due process? And my second question is, if the government would implement just one of these recommendations immediately, any of the recommendations at all that they have, so if the government decides to listen to outcome of this press briefing and respond to any of the recommendations immediately, which one would have most direct impact on Nigerian lives and why?
Okay, yes.
Let's go first round.
Okay.
Okay, Eze, I'll come, then you.
Let's take this 6. Sorry, gentlemen and ladies. We are all Nigerians. Some of these questions appears to me to be like we are being asked questions as if to say,
We are the government.
you gave me your mandate. TVC. I don't have any mandates. Any mandate I have is self-imposed, right? It's something we are doing to assist. So there is no way you can separate. The major theme of this conference is about the budget. Let's put it that way. And in the process of the budget, you have revenues and expenditure. And that's why we brought in the issue of 3.3 million for the electricity industry. The money is not there. We are told they're going to raise bonds. It's a payment plan. They are going to raise bonds, which is a debt, which comes back to the question of public funding, where we are discussing the budget. So we are saying, in the past, we have made laws, policies, and regulations about how the budget should be formulated, approved, implemented, reported upon, and audited. For instance, you start the formulation process with MTEF, approved by Federal Executive Council, Section 14 of the FRA, by the end of second quarter. Early July, you put it into the National Assembly. They will approve it before they go on their recess, either late July or recess. The executive takes the budget back and starts compiling it, so that by the time they come back first week of September or second week of September, it is there with them. Therefore, they will have 2 or 3 months from that September up till December before they go on the Christmas and New Year vacation to approve of it. Mr. President looks at it, signs it immediately. And January 1, implementation starts. And whatever money is available is released. And the budget has to be realistic. You don't have to budget for 50 trillion when you are sure you cannot get more than 30 or 40. So by the time you do this, the central message is implement, formulate the budget, approve of it, implement, report, and audit it in accordance with statutory provisions. These are laws that are passed by the National Assembly and assented to by Mr. President. So these laws are not our own making in civil society. Who should be held responsible? Each of the things we said has somebody in charge. For instance, if it is budget formulation, that's for the executive. It is approval, legislature. Implementation again, you come back to the executive. You come back to MDAs, collaborating with the budget office, Ministry of Finance, Accountant General, Bureau of Public Procurement for contracts to get due process approval. And then you come back. We are discussing electricity. We said the electricity regulator, NEC, okay, should look into these things. You gave people, they are discos, you gave them a mandate. Part of their qualification to be a disco is that they must have the managerial capacity to have managed similar projects or similar companies, technical capacity to understand the electricity industry, and most importantly, financial capacity to turn around the fortunes. Okay, this company is owing, it doesn't have money, it's owing staff, it can't buy transformer. You must show us you have $500 million somewhere that when you come in, you can order the first 5,000 batch of transformers to start installing and hope that as you make profit, you now withdraw your money. But the system was subverted. For instance, the people who bought Abuja Disco had no money. They borrowed money from UBA. And they couldn't even pay the cost of borrowing. UBA had to come in to take over. At some point, I don't know now, as of now, at some point, UBA was posted their staff, cowboy mentality, collecting tariff directly from people. Because it happened to me, they did it, and I told them it will not happen, and I challenged them. We went to NEC here, their office here in Guarempa, and of course, they were told that they were owing me over 300,000 in terms of tariffs. Yes, they had to pay me because at some point, I told the man who was in charge, he said, is he seeing me as the first lawyer? I said, you are not my mate. I will teach you a lesson. And at the end of the day, I taught him a lesson because when he came to the forum, he was stuttering. Now, why would you give the discourse to companies that were insolvent, that didn't have the money? So we are making that recommendation to them. Every recommendation that we are making has somebody it is. And the cause of all these things is because the laws are there, nobody is following them. Simple. Institutional framework, laws are there. Follow the law. Don't simply pretend like you don't know what you are doing while the laws are there. And even to talk about what the Action Aid Country Director talked about, constituency projects, all those impositions. I think we need to have an intellectual debate about even the foundations, because most of these foundations is that we have not sat down in Nigeria to discuss as reasonable human beings. The Constitution has schedules. There are things reserved for local government. There are things reserved for states. There are those reserved for the federal government. And there are those on the concurrent list. Federal government can intervene and state governments can intervene. Most of the projects I see in constituency projects are small boreholes. Sometimes building palaces for traditional rulers. Sometimes town halls. With utmost respect from my little knowledge of the law, these are projects that should not go beyond the local government level. So the question is, if it is a fundamental aphorism that the National Assembly cannot legislate outside this constitutional competence, you can only legislate based on those things you have authority to legislate based on the constitutional schedules. So if the local borehole in my village is not within the constitutional schedule for the federal government, for the National Assembly, and the budget is a law, so you cannot ideally, stricto sensu, legislate outside your constitutional schedule. And if you are legislating for a small borehole in my town and it's not outside your constitutional circle, what you are doing is an illegality. But that debate hasn't been had. And I think at some point in time, some people may need to go to the Supreme Court to challenge this. But there is an incestuous romance and relationship between the executive and the legislature. Because I had thought at some point in time, one president will sit up and say, I'm not signing. And under our constitution, the president doesn't need to go to Federal High Court or Court of Appeal if he's quarreling with the legislature. Same thing with the legislature quarreling with him. He goes straight to the Supreme Court, formulates questions for the Supreme Court to answer, lays down the facts there, and under 2-3 months, President versus President of the Federal Republic versus President of the Senate and Speaker of the House of Reps, the Supreme Court will give us a final word on that. And I don't see the Supreme Court allowing the current issue to continue. But it's rub my back and I rub your back. And in real politics, I was telling him, the National Assembly has the powers to impeach the president. And there is nowhere an impeachable offense is defined in the Constitution. An impeachable offense is whatever the legislators determine to be an impeachable offense. So if they wake up in the morning and see a pimple on your face, and they say, no, Mr. President doesn't need a whole federal republic. You can't have this pimple. You are gone. The only thing the courts will do is what? To identify if the procedure, they say, serve him, give him some weeks' notice. Give him opportunity to respond. When he responds, tell the CJ to appoint a committee. If the CJ appoints a committee, whatever they say, that's the only thing the court will. So there is this real politics of, rub my back, I rub your back. At the end of the day, whenever the National Assembly's money is withheld, there's always rumbling in the National Assembly. They must get what they want, but a president needs to stand up to them. I don't know whether he's the current president. Let me stop here. Okay.
Yeah. So actually, there are just two issues that I just want to respond. You actually asked the question, what can we do? I mean, of course, like as you mentioned, we are just a volunteer groups trying to raise the consciousness of Nigerians and first politicians. We are not opposition political parties. So it's important that you also have that clarity, because we are not anti-government, because all the work we are doing, we are contributing it to get government work, to support government free of charge. Nobody gives us any money supporting the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. We are doing it for the sake of our country. Secondly, with regard to the constituency project that keep on coming in every year in our budget, I think it's obvious that the National Assembly considered constituency project more paramount than any other, responsibility they have. And if that is the case, then we need to discuss and come up with a legal framework on how to track, monitor, and ensure the appropriateness of application of constituency project. Anything other than that, you will continue to waste resources, you will continue to duplicate resources, you will continue to go and do projects that after you leave the parliament, the legislature, the state or the local government, because there's no consultation before those projects are actually put. So the project would be wasted, abandoned. So in order to save Nigeria from wasting money, let us have a legal framework about constituency project in Nigeria, so that it can be properly audited, monitored, and also appreciated by the community, the very community you say you are doing. But the kind of fraudulent constituency project that you see in the name of empowerment, some of them will buy motorcycle and they will not give it to the constituent, they will keep some, and the next year you will see the same motorcycle or empowerment to say that they have carried you to go and do training, which nobody actually evaluates. So I think in order to address all this recklessness in our, fiscal procedures, we need to have clarity. We need to actually, come up clean, so that we don't need to be wasting public taxpayers' money, because in the past, civil society contributed to, discussion around appropriation. Today, no civil society is invited either in the assembly or in the executive to give based on their own knowledge and based on their own information and research they have done in terms of implementing the budget to suggest or to recommend. That process needs to come back so that Nigerians can have ownership on this. Otherwise, it now becomes just a personal thing that people are doing.
Thank you very much. So to bring back the conversation, I know the question was basically, what do we want? And because we listed quite a number of areas of concern, I think some of you tended to think that we have asked for too much. But our primary concern is that we are asking that there should be there's systemic erosion of lawful, transparent, and accountable public finance management. That our public finance management is basically not the rules guiding our public finance management is not being followed by the government, and that government needs to come back to ensuring that they obey the rules, whether it's budget, whether it's and that they should also consider the interests of citizens, Nigerian citizens, that citizens are suffering, and it is the role of government to deal with some of these issues. So it is, and so these things we are saying that there is lack of obeying laws, not transparent, and that government is not working in public interest. It's manifesting in many ways, constitutional breaches normalized by culture of opacity and weak compliance. So the other question is, what can civil society do? Yes, somebody says SARAP goes to court a lot. That's true. I know many other organizations also do that, including Center for Social Justice. I also know that a number of us are working with many government agencies, trying to help them to get their acts together, either helping them to assess their system, helping them to put the right system in place. Some of those work we do for free. Some they are basically saying, come and help us do this. And some we do it for them because as citizens, we also want them to get things right. So that is how it is. The government should obey the law. Whether it's about the budget, they are not obeying the law, they are not doing the right thing, and so it's affecting the growth of the economy, and it's affecting the quality of life that Nigerians deserve to live. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So much have been said on the responses, but I still want to add, you know, the last question asked, or you asked that question on the courses, and you laid out about 3 major points. I think they are all the answers in terms of why the dysfunctionality. Yeah, so you are looking at weak institutions. So weak institutions are not carrying out their responsibility, their mandates the way it should. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been in the kind of state we are with regards to our physical environment. You talked about circumvention of the processes. That's exactly what John just said now. So we have Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 that fundamentally lay down all the session procedures, systems with regards to our public finance, with regards to the whole fiscal architecture. But they've all been jettisoned. They've all been violated. So what we have currently is a system that does not be guided by the acts establishing us. So that is a major challenge. And what it means in another gap here is that we are looking at a commission that houses that act, that has no power, that has no power to sanction, no power of sanction. It cannot do anything. Then at the same time, talking about institution, we are looking at, we spoke about the quantum of debts and that the speed through which they are piling up within over the last three years. So you have a DMO office. DMO is supposedly, going by our Fiscal Act mentioned again, lay down the procedures. The procedures are there. So, but they are not followed. They are supposed even to guide the process, but it's just an advisory body. They can advise, but they cannot enforce anything. So you see where the aspect of weak institution comes in. So the other one is, what is civil society doing? Maybe I will answer this with regards to all of them. This is an area that civil society organization, all of us here and beyond, other organizations that are not here, been providing capacity building support to MDAs. They have been providing technical support, some of them through technical working groups, working very closely to these MDAs. Some of them opened the space for civil society to even support their budgetary processes. Even at the state level and all that. But largely is to say that pick this. What I'm saying now is there's an inherent gap in our fiscal policies instruments. All of them from the act and everything. There's none of them that has an entry point for civil society participation. It's not recognized. None of our fiscal instruments provides an entry point for civil citizens, not even civil society, citizen participation. And that is also a fundamental error for us. Because so you ask the question, the rising of the trillions of public budgets from year to year, the speed at which we are moving, is the same speed that poverty is moving, is the same speed at which inequality is moving. So what is happening? So what is happening is that our budgetary process does not allow citizen participation. And for that, it does not represent the needs of the people. If you read further, you look further, the concept of participatory budget has transformed many society, many countries. Taken from Brazil, where it started, there's so much empirical evidences out there on what it means when citizens are part of the budgetary process. It translates to development. It translates to effective public service delivery and all that. They are numerous. So this is for the media. I would like for this to be even an entry point in terms of ask that question. Where is the role of citizen in our public finance architecture in Nigeria? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. One of the things that would get this government to listen, I think what we need to recognize is we keep drifting and it's getting worse. It's not getting better. So the situation is getting worse. Now you have a national assembly, particularly the Senate, that is quite autocratic. And that can come from the history of the kind of senators that are coming into National Assembly. So you have more governors who have been used to executive powers, executive orders coming into the National Assembly, and more they are now taking leadership of the Senate. And of course, they are used to having their way, giving a fiat. They fight any body that contests or that goes against them. They like passing an order. So once they are in line, they're in tune with the president. So it just becomes an executive order, both at the executive level and the legislative level. And it does not augur well with the citizens. The citizens' voices would not be heard. However, what that could lead to, it gets worse. And if that getting worse, it gets us to a point where Nigerians or citizens would then react. But we don't want to get to the point. We don't want the government, the officials, the executive and legislators to be a harm to themselves and to the country itself. We don't want to get to a point. Do you know how many countries have been taken over by military rule? We don't want to get to that point where we are. We heard that there was an attempted coup some months ago, and those people are still in detention today. But we don't want to get to a point where military would then have to come and take over. So we as citizens have to save our democracy from these elements, from these people, from these executive and legislators, even the judiciary. There seems to be state capture. So the way around it is citizens' voice must be heard. We have to do everything within our power, including going on the streets to hold government accountable. That's one of the things we can also do beyond just press conferences. You have seen us do that before. We look forward to If the government refuses, we will then mobilize Nigerians. We expect that the media will join us in this because, of course, if the military comes, the media or the civil society, all of us would will have a taste of it, which is never, ever positive, which we do not want. So we have to make sure we hold the legs of these people on the fire and make sure they deliver on their mandate or they change and deliver on the mandate that the citizens have given them to. And that is why we are saying that our elections should count. So that if you refuse to do it, we try and try, we say all of this, then in the next election, we vote you out. But not that you would not do the thing citizens want from you. You manipulate the election process, and then the election result at the end of the day is somehow manipulated, and you skip forcing yourself down on the citizens. So going on the streets is part of the ways we would get the government to listen and act for us. And we have seen that work in the past. And we hope that we don't have to get there all the time. But if we have to, we were ready to go that route to get government to listen to us. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Andrew. During the discussion, we had Arise Television come in to join the discussion and News Central. Any questions from you? Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Frank Omalapi. I report for Arise News. Apologies first, I came in late. Just trying to beat some things before coming. So, yes, we'll appreciate the work that the CSOs are doing, and like Dr. mentioned, we do know that your primary assignment is not to fight the government. We know that you've also been providing technical support to government when necessary. But what we are saying, like the question my colleague from TVC was asking, is perhaps looking at beyond issuing press conferences, beyond gathering like these, beyond having conversations like these, which is of course very key. We're also seeing, like Andrew referenced, when it is necessary to even storm the National Assembly, we should do it, because when we do analysis of what the CSO do and what they've been doing over the years, it seems that, especially under this government, it seems that there's a kind of pushback that is subtly silencing the voices of CSOs that we have. Not that they are not doing much. They are doing very well. They are speaking. Today we are here, fantastic conversations. But again, on the other side, it looks like each time they speak, the government, continue to push back at what they are doing. And so when it is necessary, really, because we journalists, what we do is that we balance the two. The government speaks, we ask the critical questions, the CSO are having a gathering, what they've seen in terms of data and what is not good about the budget, we carry it. But that is our job, right? So, but when it is necessary that the CSOs, hit the street, they have to be there. There's nothing bad. You're not fighting the government, we do know. But when the government is not listening to what you are saying, to the messages that you are sending, and it seems that all your effort is being eroded. So of course you have to push back as well. So we are not inciting the CSO, but we are saying beyond the press conferences, beyond the conversations, if it is necessary to hold the government accountable when necessary, it is necessary to hit the National Assembly, then so be it. Thank you so much.
Okay, so maybe just to add to this. So you see, this is a coalition of concerned organizations. As I said earlier, the organizations are more than represented. The organizations are more than represented here. There are still other organizations. So in terms of hitting the street, there are two approaches to this. We are here on the technical sessions. The technical session provides the issues. We raise the concerns and raise the solution, put it out there for the public. Then the other level, you are looking at the aspect you mentioned, hitting the street. Between February and March, we were in the street more than 4 times. Different coalition on the Electoral Act 2026. So moving to the street is part of us, is still part of our plan, but the issues have to be there. And it's to say that we still hit the street. It's still part of the plan. But while that aspect is there, we still aspect of providing this information to the public. These elements, these statements we have there will still be packaged and sent to the relevant MDAs. They will all get them and we'll still follow up with them. It's to say that, unfortunately, that even when Buhari was in there, the civic space wasn't as threatened, as closed as we have it today. It's rapidly closing. But at the same time, we still find a way of engaging. It's unfortunate that a president with an activist background that have led 1 million march with Shoyinka, that have put up 2-pager commentary in the Guardian. I'm sure many of you will have it on the removal of fuel subsidy. 2 pages in Guardian. I have it. And move to 1 million march in shutdown everywhere with Shoyinka is the same person that the first day he assumed power was the first day he made his pronouncement. It's so unfortunate. But we are there. We are not giving up. And what we are saying is that the media, we rely on you in terms of creating awareness on what we are saying, in terms of providing information out there. But like my colleague said, we are not fighting government. We are collaborating. In fact, our process starts from consultation. We consult, we negotiate. There are processes. Moving to the street is at the peak. It comes last. When every other option have failed, that's when we move to the street. But there are processes, processes of building the institution capacity. In some areas, we see gap. Thank you. We've taken so much time.
All right.
Yeah.
We can close and then consider going to the streets.
Okay. Okay, so Vivian will give us a Vivian will give us a closing remark. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My task is actually very simple. It is to say thank you for coming. Thank you to all the civil society organizations, the coalition, social justice movements, and unions that pulled ranks at short notice to ensure that we were all here today. Thank you to the press for showing up. And our hope is that you would use your platform to ensure that statements made today, discussions made, pain points shared are widely disseminated to the general public and reach those government, MDAs, the executive, the legislature that are responsible for the changes we want to see. I will round up by reading the last paragraph of the statement, which reads that Nigeria stands at a critical crossroads. The choice is between a rules-based fiscal system anchored on law, transparency, and accountability, or a continued descent into discretionary and opaque fiscal governance. We urge all arms of government to act decisively to restore integrity, discipline, and public trust in Nigeria's public finance management system. Thank you, and thank you for coming.
All right, very quickly, please. We want to take a group photo, and we are not going out. We are using this banner stand here. Those sitting, please sit. Those sitting, please sit. And while the rest of us, media and please, our media colleagues, let's go stand behind them for the group photo. Media. Be good now. Please, media, let's be quick about it. And other colleagues